War has broken out again in the Middle East, so what will Trump do now that 4 ships have been hit? Also, could this Nordic summit be a turning point for Trump? Why is it being called a big win for him? And then there's Trump's children's investment account, which has been a hot topic lately. Does it have anything to do with you? Do you know the latest developments on this? Actually, behind all this is a lesson about how the American economy works. All right, welcome to Good Morning America with Feng Wei, bringing you the latest updates. Good morning, America, although it's already afternoon here on the East Coast. The schedule's been a bit irregular these past couple of days due to some special circumstances. Normally, I bring you Good Morning America at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Let me also greet our friends watching on YouTube and our listeners on Sound of Hope, Silicon Valley, FM 96.1. All right, let's get right to the main topics. Let's talk about this. Since the ceasefire in this war, well, right now there's a ceasefire. The last ceasefire was a temporary one, and it's been a week since then. After that, Iran attacked 4 commercial ships, and Trump is furious about it. Before we get into that, let's first talk about the funeral of Iran's former supreme leader Khamenei, which started on July 3rd. This time, the Iranian authorities made a big deal out of it, and the events lasted from July 3rd all the way to July 6th. They organized a massive, multi-day state funeral that spans several cities for the burial of Khamenei, the former supreme leader of Iran. This was a nationwide mobilization. People were given free transportation, free food, and free accommodation. The goal was to get as many people as possible to participate. Now, the official numbers claim that between 15 and 20 million people attended. But how many people actually attended? Honestly, only God knows, because the Iranian regime has always made falsification a routine practice. So, the photos released online have already been found to contain multiple instances of AI-generated fakes. As for the ones that aren't fake, it turns out that, besides all the free stuff, they also attracted people by offering vegetables to those who participated in the event. Anyway, the main goal was to demonstrate to the United States to use this funeral as proof that the regime still has a firm grip on its people. During the march, they even chanted slogans like "Death to America," "Down with America," or even "Kill America." Those were their slogans, making the provocation really strong. Iran claimed representatives from over 100 countries attended, but that was an exaggeration. Most sent low-ranking officials. Only the heads of state from Pakistan, Armenia, and Georgia actually came. Tajikistan and Iraq. These countries are just north of Iran, right? So it's just these countries plus Pakistan. As for others, like Turkey to the north, and even their negotiation partners, what are they called? The coordination countries like Qatar, they didn't come at all. So this time, well, the heads of state didn't come, right? So what's the biggest highlight this time? Such a large-scale funeral seems to be put on for the Americans to see, right? It really does look grand and imposing, but there's a drawback, or maybe a weakness. After 150 days, Iran's new supreme leader, Khamenei, still hasn't appeared. Why the delay? Khamenei has 4 sons. While 3 have been seen, the most important one, his chosen successor, remains missing. Khamenei's still missing, so what's going on? Either he's dead and the leader's a fake, or it's a case of using a puppet ruler to control the masses. Is that possible? The other possibility is that he's been disfigured, or maybe lost a leg and can't appear in public, so that's another possibility. This second theory was mentioned by the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Haig, but of course he's just speculating too. So right now, no one really knows what's going on in Iran. Wow, it's like that saying, the divine dragon shows its head but not its tail, except in this case, you can't see the head or the tail at all. At the same time, after the ceasefire last week, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard suddenly violated the ceasefire agreement last night, on the 6th, by targeting commercial ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. This time, they were moving along the southern coast, near the islands on the Oman side. They fired at least 2 missiles, one of which severely damaged a Qatari ship, a liquefied petroleum gas and liquefied natural gas carrier called the Al Raqayyat. This caused its engine to catch fire and fill the ship with thick smoke. Fortunately, there were no casualties. All right, so at the same time, the latest reports say that Iran attacked a total of 4 commercial ships within a day and a half. Of course, 3 of these have been confirmed, but the latest news says it's 4. The situation is still developing. When the 4th ship was hit, it suffered structural damage. As a result, Brent crude oil, that is the North Sea Brent crude from the UK, immediately rose by 2.5%, reaching nearly $74 per barrel. Reports vary on whether the U.S. provided protection or an escort. Others claim they were merely guided when attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. Naturally, Trump was furious. Trump said that the U.S. military has stated they are preparing and may carry out retaliatory strikes. They are currently weighing a series of options, and last night, President Trump said that the United States will reach an agreement with Iran, but if an agreement can't be reached, he will finish the job. So what does that mean? It means that military action is not off the table. President Trump said that finishing this matter wouldn't be difficult. He still prefers to reach an agreement because he doesn't want to affect 91 million people, but he also said that they could destroy Iran's bridges and energy supplies within an hour. Right now, Iran doesn't have any money, and the U.S. hasn't given them any funds. In other words, even though the MOU was signed a few weeks ago, the U.S. hasn't given Iran a single cent. The secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council is named Zolgathar. He criticized Trump's threats as delusional. But how is that delusional? It's just a matter of whether he decides to take action or not. How could that be called delusional? But criticism doesn't even make sense. But this round of strikes happened right as Trump arrived at the NATO summit. And where was this NATO summit held? Right on Iran's doorstep, in Turkey, in the capital, Ankara. So just as the indirect negotiations between the U.S. and Iran in Doha had just ended without results, launching such an attack only makes the situation even more tense. The tension is rising, to sum it up. I've told everyone many times before, the situation between the U.S. and Iran is always on and off. There's really no end to it. It's impossible to reach complete peace, and neither side is willing to go all out in a big fight. That's just how it is. All right, now let's talk about Trump going to the NATO summit in Europe. What's he doing in Europe? Europe is making huge purchases, really showing a lot of sincerity. What's going on? So recently, President Trump went to Ankara, Turkey to attend this year's NATO summit. President Trump arrived there, and all along the way, he's been criticizing Europe's defense. He's been saying that Europe isn't paying enough for its share of the costs and has threatened to withdraw from NATO, or at least to stop honoring the collective defense commitment, Article 5 of NATO. In fact, the U.S. has already started gradually withdrawing troops from certain countries. Now, the U.S. hasn't fully disclosed the details of its reduction plans in Europe, but according to a military official who spoke to Reuters, the cuts cover a wide range of areas, from refueling planes to fighter jets, drones, and ships. At the same time, Reuters reported that NATO's multinational leaders today, on the 7th, took the lead in announcing military equipment deals worth billions of dollars. The purpose was to show President Trump, who was attending the NATO summit, their commitment. They wanted to demonstrate that NATO allies are responding to President Trump's demands to increase defense spending in Europe. And the most enthusiastic among them was NATO's Secretary General Rutte, the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands. At the Ankara Defense Industry Forum in Turkey, which took place before the summit, he called for a revolution in the defense industry within NATO. What does that mean? He said that the military threats from Russia, the Chinese Communist Party, North Korea, and Iran are very real. In the next 5 years, NATO countries will invest more than $40 billion to enhance their counter-drone capabilities. And the most important part of this is what kind of business opportunities this brings to Trump, specifically what kind of defense business. So the first thing is companies like Northrop Grumman in the United States. This is a very famous American defense contractor that supplies surveillance drones. Second is Lockheed Martin, another major American defense company. And they signed a draft agreement with Germany's Rheinmetall. The goal is to jointly produce what are called short-range ballistic missiles for the Army in Germany, ATACMs. This is the first time this type of missile will be produced outside the United States. So, producing American missiles in Germany, this is the situation. Third, they are also purchasing the American MQ-4C Triton drone and things like that. Basically, it is a whole bunch of procurement plans. So, here's my commentary. In dialect, the question is, will Europe end up splitting with the United States? Will they even end up at odds with the United States? No. As we've seen, no matter how much noise there is when it comes to trade agreements or tariff agreements, they still end up signing them. And with NATO, even though there are complaints, in the end, they still come up with the funding. to increase NATO's defense burden sharing, especially this time since Trump has been constantly criticizing NATO. At this NATO summit, they all want to avoid upsetting Trump, so they've basically prepared for a lot of purchases. So in this regard, Europe and the United States can't possibly go their separate ways. That's the first point. The second point, can you see it? Is the US really acting in Europe's best interest? Why would they split? Think about it. If the US wasn't looking out for Europe, or if they were wary of Europe, why would he go all out to encourage Europe to arm itself, right? If you encourage someone to arm themselves, what does that mean? It definitely means that person is like a brother to you. Only someone in your own family would you trust enough to encourage them to arm themselves so freely. Plus, they're even transferring their own short-range missiles, Army short-range missiles, which are extremely precise and highly deterrent. These short-range missiles are going to be produced directly at Germany's Rheinmetall factory. If they weren't family, why would they do this, right? So this is the fundamental essence of the US-Europe relationship. There's no way the two sides could ever break apart. All right, now on another note, meanwhile, there's another piece of news about the Chinese Communist Party. Yesterday, they test-fired what is said to be a submarine-launched intercontinental ballistic missile in the Pacific, which is reportedly capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. This missile was launched from a Chinese submarine. It was suspected to have been launched from a Type 094 submarine crossing the Philippine Sea and landing in the South Pacific north of the Philippines, which made both New Zealand and Australia extremely nervous. They issued statements criticizing it. The U.S. State Department also criticized the Chinese Communist Party for expanding its nuclear arsenal and refusing to limit nuclear weapons. The U.S. ambassador to Japan went even further, criticizing Beijing for being self-contradictory. On one hand, loudly criticizing Japan and cabinet member Sanae Takaichi for increasing defense spending, while on the other hand, flexing its muscles in the Pacific. So, as a result, the United States, France, Germany, Japan, Australia, and Canada have all issued statements of criticism one after another. Then the Secretary General of NATO, Rutte, said that this shows we can't be too naive about China. To be precise, he meant we can't be too naive about the Chinese Communist Party. So this is the relevant situation in Europe. In my view, NATO is gradually coming to terms with the fact that the United States wants to withdraw from European defense affairs and is starting to fill in the gaps itself. Related to this, some other European countries are building new fleets, updating and replacing their aircraft fleets, and so on. I won't go into detail about that. The point is that Europe is starting to roll up its sleeves and defend itself. Also, let me mention some related news. President Trump said yesterday that it's expected that on September 24th, which is about 2.5 months from now, Chinese President Xi Jinping will come to the White House to meet with Trump. At that time, the United Nations General Assembly will also be taking place in New York. As for Trump and Xi Jinping, they met in Beijing this May, as we all know. However, there are still differences between the two sides on issues such as Taiwan and the geopolitical situation in the Middle East. The latest news is that on July 4th, the American pastor who had been detained by the Chinese Communist Party was released. Trump had requested the release of 2 people at that time. So all these human rights or hostage issues are just bargaining chips for the CCP. You can see this very clearly. All right, now let's talk about today's important news. Trump's children's account has launched, and the business community is responding enthusiastically. What's going on? On July 4th, the 250th anniversary of America's founding, Trump's account officially went online. So, what's the origin of this account? It comes from the beautiful act that was passed last year. This act created a tax-advantaged investment account for children. What does that mean? It means the money you put in, where does it go? It goes into index funds, funds like that, and the cost to maintain these funds is very low. So over the long term, the value grows, but once the money's put in, you can't take it out. You have to wait until the child turns 18 before you can transfer the money out. You can also roll it over into a retirement account, or use it for education, going to college, buying a house, starting a business, and so on. So where does this money come from? The first sum of money is $1,000 provided by the federal government under the American Opportunity Act. This is called the seed fund. But who gets it? It's not for everyone, and it's not given out every year. It's only for babies born between January 1st, 2025 and the end of 2028. So that means 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028, right? 4 full years. Basically, Trump's 4 years in office. For babies born during those years, the government will make a one-time deposit of $1,000 for each baby and then invest it in what we just mentioned, the U.S. Stock Market Index Fund. They can access it at 18, meaning every newborn is a shareholder in the American economy. That's the first sum. The second comes from the Dell family, as in Dell Computers. The Dell family donated $6.25 billion. This benefit applies to children born between Jan 1st, 2025 and Dec 31st, 2028. How many kids is that? It's estimated, since this period isn't over yet, that there will be about 14.3 million children. Okay, but of course, not all children are included, right? So this applies to children born before January 1st, 2025. Well, if, say, your child is under 10 years old, over 10 doesn't count, so it's for those under 10. Also, where you live, your household income must not exceed the median income. In areas with a median income under $150,000 by postal code, in other words, children under 10 years old in middle and lower income communities in the U.S. who were born before January 1st of last year, this $6.25 billion will be used to cover them, giving each child $250. So that's the situation. It's estimated that this can benefit up to 25 million children. Okay, so this is the gift Dell is giving to American kids. All right, so what's the process? How do you claim it? Let me explain. It's very simple. First, you go to Trump's account. He set up an account called Trump Accounts, not just account, but accounts, trumpaccounts.gov. You can apply online there, or you can submit an IRS form 4547. Form 4547 is from the IRS. It's a form for the 45th and 47th presidents, something like that. Once that's done, you just register an account and then activate it. Because Dell's $250 is only for the first 2,500 eligible accounts. Once the money runs out, that's it. No more will be given. So the earlier you open an account, the safer it is. In short, it's first come, first served. All right, and then after you open the account and meet the qualifications mentioned above, Dell will deposit the $250 into it. After that, it will grow together with the index fund over the long term. And when your child turns 18, you can withdraw it and use it however you want. This is the second sum of money, right? The third sum comes from Micron. Micron is an American memory company, a 100% pure American high-tech company. So, at the upcoming 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States, during the American Continental Expo, there will be an American manufacturing, exhibition halls, this Made in America pavilion. They're the only high-tech company being showcased is Micron. We all know, actually, do you know if it's from Idaho? It's a homegrown, Idaho-born American high-tech company, known for its potatoes, but also for producing this high-tech company specializing in memory. Now, its high-frequency, high-bandwidth memory is extremely popular. You know, Micron, everyone knows how amazing SpaceX is, how incredible Apple is. Companies like Google, Facebook, and so on, everyone knows them, right? They grew at an incredible speed. Of course, aside from SpaceX, the company that went from a $500 billion market cap to a $1 trillion market cap in the shortest time only took 89 days. Who is it? It's Microsoft. So right now, because of the surge in demand driven by AI, Microsoft is skyrocketing. Its stock price, how much did it go from? I kind of forgot, but it went from about $500 to $1,400, and that happened in a very short period of time. Or was it $200? Sorry about that. Let me clarify for everyone. On Fangway Finance, let me recommend it to you again. On Fangway Finance, I specifically talked about the story of Micron. So regarding Micron and many other aspects, the Fangway Finance channel now already has a lot of great content. I think after watching each episode, you'll feel like, oh, I learned something, or I picked up something valuable. So, for those of you who are interested in the U.S. economy or in U.S. politics and economics, I encourage you all to check it out right after this program ends. That's Fangway Finance. My main channel is Fangway Time, and this is the secondary one. Subscribe there to see the Micron story. Also, Micron is donating $250 million. So, who is he giving it to? This $250 million is expected to go to 2 million people. Who are these 2 million people? Well, first, it's the children of Micron's own employees. They'll get matching donations. And the other part is for the children in the communities where the company is located, as a way to give back to those communities. So, where are these communities located? Micron has factories in 7 states across the US. One is Idaho, which is where their headquarters is. They also have one in New York. In fact, there's a large wafer fab in central New York. Then there are locations in Virginia, California, Colorado, Minnesota, and Texas. Yeah, they have factories in all those places, so the kids in these communities will all get that initial deposit of money. Also, the latest news is that just yesterday, SpaceX's president, Gwynne Shotwell, and her husband donated 2 million shares of stock to 2 million American children, one share for each child. Based on the current price, those SpaceX shares are worth $320 million. As for Shotwell, she is one of the largest individual shareholders of SpaceX. Of course, not as much as Musk, but probably the biggest after him. So after the company's record-breaking IPO last month, the value of her shares shot up to $2.4 billion overnight. So he basically donated 1/7 of his wealth all at once. That's what happened. I mean, this is really what it means to be a philanthropist, right? This is what a truly good American rich person looks like. So, what did he do with the money he donated? As everyone knows, the American Beautiful Act, the Beautiful Act's $1,000, covers children born during Trump's 4 years in office, and of course those born before Trump's 4 years, kids under 10 years old. But Shortwell's donation was for those born before Trump's term. For kids over 10, those aged 11 to 17, the requirement is also that they live in areas where the average household income is relatively low, which is pretty similar to Dell's criteria. At the same time, he mentioned that for the area where SpaceX is located, in central Texas, there will be more focus on kids nearby. Of course, he's not giving out cash, he's giving SpaceX stock, one share of stock for each child. So, it's 1,111 shares, one share per child. So this is more like a long-term asset, a bet on the future of the space industry.